She didn't just slap a hoodie-clad stranger. She smacked the private jet-owning billionaire. At 30,000 feet, the cabin fell eerily quiet until a flight attendant's hand snapped across a woman's cheek with brutal precision. No warning. No remorse. Passengers froze as confusion rippled through the seats. Who was this unassuming traveler in a hoodie and sneakers? In the next breath, the world would learn she isn't just any passenger. She owns the jet. The airline, even the uniform the attender thought she ruled. Tonight, power shifts in silence, and every secret privilege crashes down in a single shocking moment. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping showdown, at 30,000 feet, hit that like button if you've ever been judged by what you wear, and subscribe now to join us on the real-life journey from prejudice to power. Comment below if you're ready to see how silence can speak louder than a slap. And let's uncover the stunning twist that changes everything. It was just after dawn on a private tarmac outside Santa Barbara, where the coastal fog still clung to the runway lights and the air tasted of salt and pine. A Gulfstream G650 gleamed under the soft morning sun, its engine silent but ready to roar across the country. Inside the hangar, the Meridian Lux flight crew ran through pre-flight checks with military precision polishing seats, loading glassware, running through safety drills. Everything about this world whispered exclusivity: tailored uniforms, polished shoes, discreet radio chatter. But at the jet's door stood someone who didn't look like she belonged. No red carpet, no velvet rope, no entourage. Just a woman in her late 30s, Dr. Nadia Holston, dressed in faded black joggers, a loose hoodie, and scuffed Adidas sneakers. Her natural hair framed her face in a casual puff. She wasn't glued to the world outside. She scrolled through her phone with the calm confidence of someone accustomed to doing things her own way. From inside the cabin, lead flight attendant Catherine Mallory spotted her immediately. Catherine's training had taught her to recognize high net worth clients by tailored suits, designer bags, private jet etiquette. This woman's attire triggered every alarm bell. Catherine exchanged a quick glance with the co-pilot no clearance alert on their screens. No last-minute add-on. No VIP notification. Yet here she was, stepping aboard as if she'd chartered the plane herself. The cabin smelled of new leather and fresh coffee. Overhead, bins clicked shut. The older couple, already seated toward the rear, rustled their newspapers, unaware of the tension building inches from them. Catherine approached the new passenger with a syrup-sweet voice that didn't reach her eyes. "Excuse me, ma'am. This jet is reserved for a private charter." Nadia slid her phone into her hoodie, lifted her gaze, and met Catherine's challenge without a flicker of fear. "I know. I'm the client." Catherine's lips curved in a half smirk as if she could taste the punchline before it landed. "Do you have some kind of confirmation?" she pressed. Nadia stood tall on the plush carpet, unruffled. "My name's on the manifest. I'm the client." From the galley, Tony, an eager young flight attendant, called out, "She's on the list, top of the manifest." Catherine froze for a heartbeat, then nodded curtly. But the doubt she felt didn't vanish. It lurked behind her eyes. In those moments, the atmosphere shifted. The cabin lights seemed a touch colder. The hum of the air conditioning grew louder in everyone's ears. Nadia claimed her cream leather seat. Her posture, relaxed legs, crossed demeanor, unreadable. She returned to her phone as though boarding a private jet. In sweats was the most ordinary thing in the world. Yet for Catherine, it wasn't over. She watched Nadia's calmness like a live grenade itching to pull the pin. Outside, the runway stretched empty toward the Pacific. Inside, the crew hovered, anxiety trailing their every movement. The older couple murmured to each other, glancing forward as if they might witness a spectacle. Catherine tugged at her apron strap, straightened her skirt. She leaned in again. "Ma'am, I need to ask for identification." Her tone had lost its sugar. Now it carried the flat precision of an interrogation. Nadia looked up, her voice cool. "I already gave you my word. Why secondary checks?" The question hung between them like a stone. Tony edged closer, placing himself as a buffer. He could see the friction in every crease of Catherine's uniform, the simmering doubt in her eyes. Catherine inhaled, squared her shoulders, and made the choice that would shatter the morning calm. In this quiet, measured tension of bright leather and hushed corridors, two worlds collided: a woman judged by her hoodie and an institution built on appearances. And as the engines roared to life, no one yet realized how deeply a single act of bias could reverberate through every heart on board. As the door clicked shut behind Dr. Holston, the cabin's air shifted from polite professionalism to taut suspicion. Catherine Mallory stood rigid in the aisle, her polished black pumps planted like sentinels on the plush carpet. She cleared her throat, voice icy beneath the veneer of courtesy. "Ma'am, I need to see identification. Please." A low hum from the overhead vents filled the silence, and every passenger's gaze flickered toward them. Nadia Holston slipped her phone into her hoodie pocket and looked up, her dark eyes calm but unyielding. "I already confirmed with your operations team," she said in a tone as smooth as silk, yet cold enough to draw lines on Catherine's forehead. "My name is on the manifest." In those seconds, the conflict ignited. Catherine's jaw clenched. She forced a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Standard protocol, she insisted, especially under a high-security charter. No one boards in sweats and hoodies. Her words landed like stones, echoing off the leather seats and through the narrow cabin. Nadia's spine straightened, and she felt a familiar heat rise in her chest part, indignation, part controlled fury. Her pulse thrummed in her ears as she weighed her next words. "Are you implying I don't belong here?" she asked the question a razor's edge. Behind Catherine, a young flight attendant, Tony hovered near the galley. He exchanged a glance with the co-pilot, whose expression said, "She's fine." Tony swallowed and called softly, "EAMOP has confirmed Dr. Holston's clearance. She's top of the manifest." Catherine's lips parted, and for an instant, her facade cracked. But then she leaned forward, voice dropping, so only Nadia could hear. "Something's not right. There's no way she's who she says she is." That whispered accusation, meant for secrecy, slipped into the cabin's charged atmosphere like a live wire. Nadia's breath paused. All around her, she felt the weight of disapproval, every covert glance, every half-turned head. Her hands curled into loose fists at her sides. Memories flickered: countless boardrooms where suits had underestimated her fundraisers, where invitations had been revoked. But never here, not in her own domain. She squared her shoulders and spoke, voice steady. "I've flown Meridian Lux 12 times this year. If you'd like, I can share the receipts." The challenge hung in the air, met only by the soft rustle of a newspaper from the couple in the back, their eyes darting between the two women. Catherine's smile snapped shut. She took a measured step closer. Her perfume, hints of jasmine and steel, wafted across Nadia's senses. "I'm only doing my job," she said, tone flat. "I have to protect our clients." The words struck Nadia like a slap of their own. She lifted her chin. "I am your client," she said, each syllable deliberate. "I own the plane, the charter company, and the contract that pays your salary." For a heartbeat, Catherine wavered, her perfectly arched brow lifting. "But pride is a stubborn thing." She crossed her arms and frowned. "Ownership doesn't exempt you from protocol," she countered. Nadia's palms warmed, her heart galloping. She fought the urge to raise her voice, to unleash the torrent of indignation surging through her veins. Instead, she inhaled slowly, letting the tension coalesce into a single crystalline moment of power. Before Catherine could respond, Tony appeared at Nadia's elbow. "Let's just board, please," he urged quietly. "We can move on." His attempt at peacemaking only fanned the flames. Catherine bristled, eyes flicking to Tony, as if he had betrayed her. Then she pivoted back to Nadia, voice dangerously low. "Show me who you really are." The implication, "prove your identity or get off this plane," felt like an open challenge. Nadia's jaw tightened. She stepped forward until she stood toe-to-toe with Catherine. The sterile cabin lights glinted off her hoodie's zipper. "Touch me again," she said softly. "I dare you." Catherine's breath hitched. For a second, the world slowed. The couple at the rear dropped their newspapers. The co-pilot stiffened behind the cockpit door, Tony's eyes widened. Then Kate's restraint shattered, with the fluid motion of someone who's made split-second decisions before Catherine reached for Nadia's arm. Her hand closed around Nadia's wrist, white-knuckled and forceful. Nadia recoiled, pain flaring like lightning. "Don't touch me," she said, voice low but unshakable. Catherine stumbled back, cheeks flushing. She began, but before she could finish, her hand snapped out in a harsh, open slap. The sound cracked through the cabin like a pistol shot. Time froze. Passengers gasped. Tony's fist slammed against the galley counter. The older couple's trembling hands hovered over coffee cups. Nadia's head snapped to the side, her palm flying to her cheek. In that suspended instant, every eye locked on the silent tableau, a flight attendant uniform impeccable but shattered by arrogance, and a woman in sneakers, blood rushing in her ears, embodying the smoldering power of injustice. Tony's voice cut through the stunned hush. "What the hell are you doing?" Catherine's face blanched. She opened her mouth, words dying on her lips. "I was trying to get her to leave," she stammered, voice cracking like ice underfoot. "She owns the plane," Tony snapped back, eyes flashing. "She's Dr. Nadia Holston, CEO of Vanguard Systems, majority stakeholder in Meridian Lux." Reality slammed home. Catherine's knees wobbled. The couple shrank into their seats. The co-pilot exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. Meanwhile, Nadia stood rigid, her expression unreadable, an unspoken verdict reverberating through the cabin. The engines roared to life, but in every heart on board, a different force had been set in motion, the reckoning of prejudice, the rumble of consequences yet to come. And, as the jet taxied toward the runway, one truth made itself clear: no amount of authority grants immunity from accountability. The moment the cabin descended into stunned silence, Nadia Holston felt the shifting weight of power settle into her bones. For a heartbeat, she stood motionless, hand pressed to her cheek as the echo of Catherine's slap faded into the hum of engines warming up. Then, without a word, she turned and walked back to her seat. Each step deliberate, controlled, leaving Catherine frozen in the aisle, like a ghost caught in the headlights. As Nadia sat down, she reached into her hoodie pocket and withdrew a slim leather notebook stamped with her logo. The older couple in the back cleared their throats. Tony hovered, uncertain. Catherine swallowed her uniform, feeling suddenly tighter, as though the very fabric had turned against her. The plane taxied toward the runway, but everyone on board sensed they were already in motion on a far more consequential journey. Across the cabin, Nadia opened the notebook to the first page: Equity Policy Draft, In-Flight Activation. Her pen traced a line beneath the title with surgical precision. She looked up, voice low but firm. "We're proceeding as scheduled. No delays." Tony exhaled, relief and apprehension mingling in his eyes. Catherine's breath caught her authority evaporating. Moments later, a gentle chime signaled the seatbelt sign. Nadia tapped her pen against the page. "Captain Templeton, conference call now." The pilot's clipped response crackled through the intercom. "On my way, Dr. Holston." Catherine's heart thudded. This wasn't part of any protocol she knew. A few seconds later, the cockpit door cracked open. Captain Rob Templeton, framed by glowing instruments, stepped into the gallery, his expression respectful but serious. Nadia motioned to an empty seat. He closed the door behind him. In those hushed seconds, the cabin became a boardroom. Hushed, expectant, every eye drawn to the center of power. Captain Nadia began sliding the notebook across the galley counter. "We need legal to draft an immediate policy rollout. No spin. No press release. Full transparency. Catherine Mallory's actions violate our bias enforcement protocols. Effective at landing, she's grounded, pending retraining." Templeton's jaw clenched. "Dr. Holston, that's unprecedented mid-flight." Nadia's gaze held his. Exactly the moment for change is when everyone's watching. "Approve now?" He nodded, fighting an impulse to argue. "Understood. I'll notify operations." He stepped back, relocked the door, and their makeshift boardroom dissolved as he returned to the cockpit. The cabin lights felt brighter. Catherine glanced around to see every crew member's eyes flick between her and Nadia. Pulling her hoodie aside, Nadia tapped her watch. A discreet icon glowed, Skylux Live. She pressed it, and within seconds, the cabin's entertainment screens flickered to life, with her face calm and confident. No flashy graphics, just her voice and her words. Good morning. I'm Dr. Nadia Holston. You've witnessed an incident born of unconscious bias. Effective immediately, Meridian Lux is launching a company-wide realignment program. We will train every employee on empathy, accountability, and respect. No exceptions. This isn't about punishment, it's about justice. Thank you for your attention. The video slid into silence. Passengers leaned forward. Crew members straightened. Catherine's face paled as her own uniform screen scrolled her name and offense, Catherine Mallory, grounded pending retraining. Her voice caught in her throat when Tony whispered, "They're already drafting the policy documents." In that transition, the plane climbed through layers of atmosphere, but more importantly, had pierced the barrier of protected privilege. Catherine felt the ground fall out beneath her. Her mind raced her 6-year career, her mastery of protocol, the countless celebrities she'd served all undone in a single live declaration. Meanwhile, Nadia closed the notebook and tucked it away. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen, equity policy attachments email to legal CC the board. Her calm efficiency was the hammer that sealed the gavel. As the flight leveled off at cruising altitude, whispers rippled through the cabin passengers, trading astonished glances, crew exchanging nods of solidarity, the older couple offering Nadia discreet applause. Catherine slumped into her jump seat, head bowed, stomach churning with regret and fear. Behind her, Nadia caught Tony's eye and gave a small nod acknowledgement that he'd done the right thing. Tony returned a tentative smile. The tension didn't evaporate, but it morphed into something stronger, collective resolve. For the next hour, Catherine sat listening to an in-flight workshop video on implicit bias, her eyes widening as real stories of discrimination played out. Nadia observed her from across the cabin, seeing that spark of understanding ignite. When the seatbelt sign chimed for landing, the cabin was transformed no longer a stage for entitlement, but a vessel of accountability. Catherine rose, slowly approached Nadia with trembling steps. Whether apology would be accepted or rebuffed, the path forward had already been set. And, as the runway lights swept beneath the grumbling engines, every soul on board felt it. Justice isn't delayed until touchdown it takes flight, the moment someone chooses to hold power accountable. As the cabin screens blinked back to life, every face turned toward the glow. Dr. Holston's calm visage filled the monitors, no slick graphics, no flashy animations, just her voice steady and unwavering. "Welcome to Meridian Lux Flight 221, she began. "You've just witnessed an act of unconscious bias. Now watch how we turn that moment into meaningful change." The screen split into 2 feeds. On the left, Catherine Mallory sat stiffly in her jump seat, head bowed, shoulders tense. On the right, a live feed displayed the faces of Meridian Lux executives in a remote boardroom, eyes locked on their screens. Below, a progress bar labeled Equity Activation Sequence. In-flight began its silent countdown. A hush fell. You could hear the soft hiss of the air vents, the distant low rumble of engines. Then Catherine's name scrolled beneath her image. Catherine Mallory. Grounded, pending retraining. Her face went pale. She glanced at Tony, whose steady nod told her this was unchangeable. Step 1. Public acknowledgement. Dr. Holston's voice returned warm yet authoritative. "First, we acknowledge the harm done. Bias left unaddressed corrodes trust." The live feed shifted to Catherine. She rose, voice quivering, and offered a brief apology. Her admission? "I'm sorry for my actions played out in real time, the cabin's tension ratcheting up." Every passenger felt the weight of her words, the crack in her composure. Step 2. In-flight bias workshop. The seatback screens flipped to a training module, immersive scenarios, voice actors reenacting microaggressions, bouncing subtitles, emphasizing key phrases, respect, accountability, empathy. Catherine watched, eyes widening, as a vignette showed a passenger in hooded sweats being escorted off a jet, an unmistakable mirror of her own behavior. The workshop paused on the phrase, "See the person, not the stereotype." Catherine's breath caught. The cabin lights seemed to dim, as if to spotlight her moment of reckoning. Step 3. Crew Accountability Roundtable. Dr. Holston's image reappeared alongside Captain Templeton and Tony. A live Q&A began. Crew members submitted questions via their tablets. How do I recognize my own biases? What if I witness discrimination among colleagues? Each question received a clear policy-backed response from Dr. Holston guidelines. For empathy checks, before boarding mandatory bias debriefs, quarterly psychological safety surveys. The remote executives nodded vigorously, some jotting notes, others tapping pens anxiously. Step 4. Passenger Empowerment Survey. A final prompt lit up every screen. Your voice matters. Rate your sense of safety and inclusion on this flight. 1-5. You could almost feel the cabin lean forward as thumbs hovered over touchscreens. Within seconds, the aggregated score appeared 4.9 out of 5, a testament to Dr. Holston's swift leadership, even in crisis. Through it all, Catherine remained seated, her uniform, now emblematic of a system she'd helped uphold. The workshop concluded with a charge: bias is a choice. Choose better. The screen faded to black, but the hum of reflected shame persisted in the cabin. Yet, the true crescendo was still to come. As Flight 221 leveled off at 40,000 feet, Dr. Holston strode to the galley with her notebook. She tapped Catherine gently on the shoulder. Your retraining begins now, she said. Then, in a gesture that stunned everyone, she handed her own pen and notebook to Catherine. Document your reflections. I want to see how you grow. Catherine's fingers shook as she accepted the notebook. The pen's weight felt like a lifeline and a shackle. Around them, crew members exchanged supportive glances. Some offered subtle applause. The older couple, having witnessed the entire unfolding, raised their coffee cups in a quiet salute. From her seat, Nadia watched Catherine open the first page. In bold letters, Catherine wrote, "I judged a book by its cover. Today, I'm rewriting my story." The cabin lights seemed to warm the hum of the engines, carrying a new melody, one of accountability and possibility. For the remainder of the flight, Catherine sat beside Dr. Holston's folder, typing reflections, moments she'd misjudged, vows to pause and listen. Passengers returned to their routines, reading, conversing, but with a different atmosphere. This was not just a commute. It was a collective witness to change in action. When the seatbelt sign chimed for descent, Meridian Lux Flight 221 felt less like a private charter and more like a microcosm of a world confronting its biases. Catherine approached Dr. Holston, and extended her hand, a gesture previously unimagined. "Thank you for holding me accountable," she said softly. Dr. Holston took her hand, giving a firm, reassuring squeeze. As the runway lights came into view, the final words of Dr. Holston's in-flight broadcast reverberated. Justice isn't delayed until landing. It takes flight when someone decides to do what's right. In that suspended moment before touchdown, the cabin of Flight 221 was more than a plane. It was a crucible where prejudice was transformed into progress, where a single episode of bias became the catalyst for system-wide justice. The landing gear deployed with a reassuring clunk, and as Flight 221 rolled onto the Newark tarmac, the cabin exhaled collectively. Catherine Mallory remained at her jump seat, eyes fixed on the floor as the reality of her actions settled in. Every polished panel, every gleaming tray table now reflected her mistake. Around her, passengers exchanged nods of approval, silent applause for the woman who refused to be silenced. The older couple at the rear, once clutching newspapers in tense anticipation, now offered Catherine warm smiles and whispered words of encouragement. "We saw how she handled it," the gentleman murmured. "You'll do better." Their empathy cut through her shame, forging the first bridges toward redemption. Tony moved through the aisle with steady purpose, offering water and genuine kindness. He paused at Catherine's side. "You're going to be okay," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. She nodded, tears brimming as she swallowed the lump in her throat. "Thank you for standing up," she whispered. In that touch, she felt the weight of isolation lift proof that accountability could rebuild trust. Across the cabin, Dr. Nadia Holston gathered her belongings with fluid calm. Her cheeks, still tinged pink, carried the imprint of that slap, both a badge of bias confronted and a catalyst for change. She offered Catherine a measured nod as she passed. That single gesture spoke volumes, recognition of Catherine's remorse, and the beginning of a new professional covenant. Crew members straightened uniforms and exchanged furtive glances. Captain Templeton unclasped his seatbelt and stepped into the cabin, his face both relieved and resolute. "All set for disembarkation," he announced. "Welcome to Newark." His tone held an unspoken acknowledgement. This flight had redefined more than routes. On a map, it had charted a course toward a more just culture. As the doors opened and the cool evening air rushed in, passengers filed out in respectful silence. No flashy send-off, no fanfare, just a shared understanding that something extraordinary had unfolded at 40,000 feet. Security agents in plain clothes waited curbside not to shield Nadia, but to support her mission. They stood ready as she descended the stairs, steps measured and dignified. At the foot of the stairs, Nadia paused and turned toward the cabin. Her voice carried by the microphone was soft but unwavering. "You have a voice," she reminded Catherine and the crew watching behind her. "Use it to see people, not stereotypes." Then, without another word, she stepped into the waiting SUV. The door closed and she was gone, but her message lingered in the dusk. Moments later, Catherine emerged last, her posture transformed. The lessons of the flight had carved new lines of humility and resolve into her bearing. As she walked across the tarmac, every footstep echoed her commitment to stop, to listen, to learn. Behind her, Tony followed with the training notebook in hand, a tangible reminder that accountability doesn't end when the engines shut down. By the time the SUV pulled away, Meridian Lux's private terminal buzzed with a different energy, one of possibilities unlocked. In the control tower ground, staff shared murmured impressions. "Did you see how she handled that?" This isn't just PR, it's real policy. The ripple effect had begun. For Catherine, the ride home would be quiet, reflective. She would review her retraining modules, rewrite her biases into empathy, and rebuild trust, tread by careful tread. For passengers, the story would travel far beyond this flight, a testament to the power of holding people to their highest ideals. And for Dr. Holston, tonight's descent marked only the beginning, a promise that every journey from takeoff to touchdown could bring the world one step closer to justice. As you've seen, one moment of prejudice can ignite an unstoppable force for change. When silence becomes the catalyst for justice and accountability takes flight at 30,000 feet. Dr. Nadia Holston turned a single slap into a company-wide revolution, proving that real power doesn't shout, it listens, it acts, and it transforms every life in its path. If this story moved, you don't let it end here. Hit subscribe and ring the bell to join our community of changemakers who refuse to let bias go unchallenged. Share this video with friends who need to see that true leadership is earned through empathy and courage. Have you ever faced or witnessed an injustice that needed confronting? Drop your story in the comments below. Your voice matters more than you know. Next week, we'll dive into another real-life account where ordinary people flip the script on discrimination and rewrite the rules of respect. Until then, remember, before you judge someone by what they wear or where they come from, ask yourself what could happen if you listened instead of leaping to conclusions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter of transformation and justice.